Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread of the Tuscaloosa News, your humble sports columnist. I'm joined, as always, by Travis Reier, the longtime senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. You can get the Talkin Tide podcast on all sorts of apps, including Apple Podcasts and just about anywhere else you like to retrieve your favorite podcast. Also catch us on YouTube and Facebook. We're both live and recorded at those two places. The Twitter feed is talking_tide. If you'd like to give us a quick follow there, you'll get link drops to all our podcasts there, running weekly here at this time of year. Travis, we're just ripping off Sunday Nighter after Sunday Nighter after we wrap things up for Alabama in the SEC tournament. The Crimson Tide falls to Notre Dame. Final score 78-64 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Alabama goes out with a whimper, Travis, and other than to say it should have been expected based on the way Alabama had gone into the tournament, I'll leave the table for you.
Yeah, you just first and foremost hate to see Javon Quinterly go down like that in the first 4 minutes of the game. And we can have the debate, might be a tad insensitive in some ways, that Quinterly's absence, Quinterly's early departure would or would not have impacted the rest of that game significantly. You can have that talk. First and foremost, you just feel bad for him in that situation, but in a lot of ways it was more of the same. And Alabama finished this season on a 4-game losing streak. I don't think any of us saw that coming back in late December, when this team, coming off wins over teams like Gonzaga and Houston, looked to be trending in a very positive direction. But over the final 21, 22 games of the season, this wasn't a 500 team, Chase. And I think that'll always be a head scratcher when you look at this team, but specific to Notre Dame, it was kind of, again, more of what we had seen in the 3 games previous in that losing streak to end the year. And that, Alabama in the first half looked pretty good in some ways. But in this instance, when Alabama was actually trailing instead of leading against Texas A&M and leading against LSU and leading against Vanderbilt, you felt like down 5 at the half. With the way this team has failed to close out games with an emphasis on the defensive end, you didn't really like their chances, even though Notre Dame was coming off the quick turnaround in Dayton. And even though this was a Notre Dame team, Chase, that really only played 7 guys.
Only played 7 guys. You're right about that. Definitely feel for Javon Quinterly. A terrible day. It's never a good time to have a knee injury. I guess we don't know exactly what the extent of it is yet. Nate Oates certainly hinted in his post-game remarks that it's probably a significant injury. Certainly looked that way as he was helped off of the floor. Hope the best for him, certainly where his pro prospects are concerned. Little doubt at this point that he will be moving on. He's done at Alabama. If he were to have some kind of a change of mind, I suppose he could peel back for another year. But I think he hinted on social media this is going to be it for him. So a tough way for Javon Quinterly to go out. At the same time, and this is more or less what I wrote in the T News after the game, you can't hang the loss on the loss of Quinterly, because this team wasn't good enough with Quinterly. And that was, something that's, you say that, and at the same time, you don't want to minimize what Quinterly meant to the team, because he meant a great deal. But at the end of the day, Travis, Cormac Ryan won the game more than any injury lost it. The guy puts up 29 points for Notre Dame, hand in his face sometimes, still 7 out of 9 from 3-point range. Blake Wesley knocks in another 18. Notre Dame shot the lights out. They were over 50% from the field. They were over 90% from 3-point range, and they were over 60% from 3-point range. So the hat has to come off first and foremost to the Fighting Irish, is how I saw it.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, especially given the circumstances and playing in the first 4 game and a double overtime first 4 game against Rutgers, no less. Then jumping on a charter, flying pretty much the red eye equivalent to the West Coast instead of from west to east. And then, playing the way they did and having energy. And, we can talk about Alabama's defense. Like you said, it's easy to bang on Alabama's defense this season, but I agree. I think you have to give credit to Notre Dame. This was an efficient offensive team coming into the tournament. That played out in San Diego. I will say that, we can talk about contested shots, but sometimes that happens after you give up some open looks early and you give those shooters and those guys confidence via open looks. Then even when you start contesting, like you probably should have from the start, they're feeling like the basket's twice the size of what it was to start the game. And they're in a better mind space, a better mindset to knock down shots. But yeah, I was impressed with Notre Dame. For Alabama, you just you needed Jaden Shackelford, especially after Quinterly went out, to be All-American type good, and it wasn't that kind of night for Jaden, unfortunately, back in his home state on the offensive end. And when they got down 10 or so, and we can talk about some whistles that didn't go Alabama's way. I thought the Jawan Gary foul call there in the second half was one of the worst calls I've ever seen. But I can't tell you with a straight face, if Javon Quinterly plays the whole game, that's probably a different game. I can't tell you that about the foul calls or the whistles that didn't go Alabama's way in the second half, because we have too much of a sample size at that point, right? To say, look, there's plenty to tell us that this team, regardless, wasn't going to get enough stops to come back from 10 down and then sustain anything offensively enough to come back from that kind of deficit.
Yeah, I think it was a football coach who coined the term "you are what your record says you are," but it applies to basketball or any
especially
other
over the last
too.
21, 22 games. I mean, the last 21, 22 games, I think they were 10 and 12 over the last 22. That's who they were since the loss to Davidson. Really, that's who this Alabama team was, right?
19 and 14, your final record. I mean, not that far over 500, frankly.
No.
And
bank those early wins. Those were huge, man.
Banked them.
And we say all this, and we've said it before. We probably need to say it again. Alabama did what it needed to do in year 3 under Nate Oates. It backed up a tournament appearance with another one.
Right.
And in retrospect, after going 1 and out, we can talk about, wow, that's a disappointment. But hell, look at the rest of the SEC at the end of the first weekend.
Yeah.
Auburn, I'm looking at right now, is about to lose by 18 to a 10 seed in the 32, Chase. Kentucky
what about all that SEC hype,
though,
Travis? That SEC hype.
Kentucky loses to St. Peter's. You got Arkansas. You got Eric Musselman left. That's what you got, right? Isn't that it? It's Arkansas, isn't it? Tennessee. What about Tennessee? Tennessee. That's a Final Four team. The SEC's got 3 teams with Final Four potential. Well, they got 1 left out of the 4 that everybody loved going into this tournament. Their best teams right now might be in the NIT.
Oh, no.
The best team in the SEC right now might be Texas A&M. They might be. They made the run to the final of the SEC tournament. They might be playing better, I guess, is a better way to say it. So, I'm all in on the NIT now. I'm all in on Vandy, playing good down the stretch. All in on Texas A&M. That's where I'll be, I guess, the next
horrific
week or
run
so.
For the Southeastern Conference,
terrible.
No doubt about it. Alabama certainly didn't contribute a thing going out in the first round. Interesting, Travis, too, I thought, and I kind of think this speaks to where Alabama is at going into next year, and we'll touch on the 22-23 Alabama basketball prospects here in a second. But where do the minutes go, right? Javon Quinterly goes out 3 minutes into the game.
JD.
I'll tell you where the extra minutes went. They went, Davison played 37.
Yeah, he had to.
But he averaged close to 30.
Right, but that's 7 more than he usually plays, and he's playing on the ball, which is on the ball is a lot of minutes for a guy.
A lot was asked of him, no doubt. beyond that, though, it was Juwan Gary. It was Darius Miles. Those were the two. Juwan Gary played 23 minutes. I can't tell you the last time Juwan Gary played 23
And
minutes.
I didn't think Juwan Gary was bad.
He played fine. Yeah,
I thought he
helped
played
them
well. He and Keon, right?
Yeah. Ellis had 16 points, 9 rebounds. Keon Ellis probably played the best game of anybody on the floor for Alabama.
Keon, probably more so than any other player for Alabama, played the kind of game he needed to play for Alabama to win.
Right.
Otherwise, I thought Juwan did well for what you said. He was asked to do more, and I thought he did.
He did. I think, and this kind of spins us forward to next season, it kind of illustrates, though, that at least a chunk of Quinterly's minutes went to bigs. Tells you a little something about what Alabama's got coming back at guard next year, right? Ellis is out. Shackelford's out. Quinterly's going to be out. J.D. Davison is the only guard coming back with significant experience.
Maybe.
At the guard
Is he
position.
coming back?
I think he's coming back.
I think right now I think that, but I probably thought that about Josh Primo last year at this time too, right?
To me, I hear you. Yeah, Josh Primo probably surprised everybody a little bit. I think I see
Primo went through the process a good ways before finalizing it. I mean, he did a good job of navigating it.
He did. He did. And J.D. Davison has an explosive level of athleticism that's not dissimilar to Primo. Primo's a different body type for sure. But when you look at Davison's play overall, he needs some polish.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, the turnover he had, I think they were down 8, and he's pushing, and they got a chance, right, in the second half to cut it to 6. And he throws this 2A high school pass across the middle that Wesley for Notre Dame looks like a free safety just baiting an interception, goes down for the layup. That was too much of what we saw from J.D. Davison this year, wasn't it?
Tossed a little egg to James Rojas all in the second half that got picked off as well. Careless passing is one of a couple of things that J.D. Davison needs to clean up. But that being said, if we assume he'll be back next year, and I think he will be, it's going to be him and who knows what else at the guard position. Jason Holt played 1 minute with Javon Quinterly not playing basically at all. Who knows what Alabama can expect from
you've got a
5-star
point guard coming too, though, in Jaden Bradley that they've already signed. So, they've got 2 5-stars coming in, one more of a wing, one on the ball. They got a really good 4-star shooting guard coming in Ryland Griffin. I'm sure we'll get more into this, but so there is that. But I think your point is, who knows, right? Exactly what this team's going to look like for next season. I think, though, Chase, that's college basketball in a nutshell right now, isn't it? Especially with the COVID year thrown in there.
Rosters flip so fast.
Yeah.
So fast. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, I didn't check both rosters. I'm almost certain there was that Avery Johnson didn't know a single player on the roster from his team. There wasn't a single guy.
Okay. Yeah. As far as recruiting guys.
Yeah. And that's only been 3 years, not 4.
Yeah. No, it's tough. I think there were a couple of guys, but yeah, I mean, they've got a 5-man class coming in that they've signed. And 10 years ago, you'd have said, well, they're locked in. They filled their spots, and they may even need some help with the roster to make it work. Right. Now, I'll be surprised if the 5 guys are the new guys, the only new guys that are in here are in Tuscaloosa for 2022, 2023. I don't know about you. My daughter is a graduate assistant in women's basketball on the Division I level. And they had their last game today in the WBI. And so I said, well, what kind of recruiting class you got coming in? She goes, we don't have any recruits. They're waiting. They're waiting on the portal. They're going to go shop the portal. I mean, that's That's college basketball, men's or women's.
Yeah.
In 2022, Chase.
That's where it's at.
With the COVID year, too, it just really changed things, too.
No question about it. There's no telling what the team will look like. And you're right. There are some big-time recruits coming in. Nate Oates, along with turning Alabama around, and I think it's fair to say 2 NCAA tournament appearances in 3 years based on the results of the previous couple of coaches, that's a turnaround. On top of that, there's no question that he can recruit really well, which when he came in from Buffalo with no real experience recruiting the SEC, recruiting the South, or even the region, that was a question mark of Nate Oates that he's also answered. But yeah, maybe it will have to be a couple freshmen. And look, you and I both tend to be a little skeptical of recruits until you actually see them on the field. That's always the prudent thing to do. That being said, in this day and age of college basketball, generally speaking, if you got a lights out recruiting class, yeah, maybe they don't all come in and live up to the hype. But if 1 or 2 of them do, it can create the entire dynamic.
Yeah, if Jaden Shackelford, Quinterly, along with Keon Ellis and somehow J.D. Davison move on, I don't see how you can't or won't go to the portal for some experience in the backcourt. You're going to have to.
Yeah.
I mean, you already have your freshmen that you're bringing in those guard positions. So I'm sure Nate Oates, Brian Hodgson, Antoine Petway, Charlie Henry, that Alabama staff, they're maintaining contact with some transfer portal options, probably even as we pod here.
As we'd say in Jacksonville, where the fishing can be good, Travis, lines are in the water.
Blue skies and tight lines.
Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. Going to thank a couple of sponsors for the program right now really quickly. Going to start by telling you all about North River Dental Associates. Dr. Jack Smalley, that outstanding local dental service with his great staff of dental hygienists. Whatever your dental needs or your family's dental needs, get over there, 1100 Fairfax Park, right off of Watermelon Road. They can do porcelain veneers, cosmetic dentistry, pediatric dentistry for the kids, laser dentistry, endodontics, dentures, the teeth whitening services. They do it all. They'll get you in and out of the chair, typically in under an hour on a routine cleaning. You got to get in there twice a year if you can. They're great with dealing with those insurance folks as well. And don't forget Botox and Juvederm treatments to tighten up those facial features at North River Dental Associates. Give them a call for an appointment. That number is 752-3506 or visit northriverdentist.com. It's North River Dental Associates.
I'm going to tell you about Peterbrook Chocolatier out there, of course, for 15 years now in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa as well. 1530 McFarland Boulevard North, exactly where you're going to find those hand-dipped chocolate strawberries. And also the chocolate popcorn that is the signature item at Peterbrook Chocolatier. But if you like chocolate, if you like sweets really of any kind, you're going to get taken care of at Peterbrook Chocolatier. Thank everyone who swung by for the St. Patrick's Day holiday, had some goodies themed in the direction of St. Patrick's Day, and now full focus shifts towards Easter Sunday. We're about a month away exactly from Easter Sunday. So go ahead and take care of your Easter needs at Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North.
Finally, going to tell you about our corporate sponsor. That would be DraftKings. College basketball fans, join the action on the court now. The biggest tournament going on with the DraftKings Sportsbook. Turn your team's victory into your own big win. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win in the NCAA tournament. Get $200 in free bets if your team wins. It is just that simple. If sportsbooks aren't available in your state yet, you can still join the college hoops action with the DraftKings pools. So download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code TPPN. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it right there on your screen. You bet $5 on any college basketball team to win. You'll get $200 in free bets if they do. with the promo code TPPN on the DraftKings Sportsbook. And Travis, we move on. Final few minutes of the program. Talk a little bit of Alabama football. We're going to hit on spring practice briefly, Travis, which is just kind of getting back underway now. We're also going to touch on
how's tonight, by the way, for the boys coming back from spring break and you're back out there this week. Oh,
yeah.
How's that reality?
You're resting up. You're already
You know what,
in bed.
though? It's still better than the fourth quarter program. I'd rather go to
practice.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'd rather do that every day, twice a day, than knowing I had a winter conditioning workout in the morning.
Especially when you're still in shorts, right? They're going to be in shorts another couple days.
Yeah, acclimation.
Alabama spring football getting back underway. We're also going to touch on a couple of former Alabama football players and their news as it relates to the National Football League, some free agency and trade news we're going to touch on. But first, Travis, really quickly, as Alabama kind of reconvenes coming off of spring break, they've got one practice in the books, and we previewed spring practice a little bit last week. But I guess some refresher thoughts from you on focuses for the coaching staff, positions that need the most attention as they get spring practice kind of cranked back up here again.
Yeah, continuation of probably what we talked about on the last podcast and what we heard from Nick Saban specifically following that first practice of spring, continuing to try to identify legitimate candidates at the offensive tackle positions, I'd say is right there near the top of that list. Beyond Jermaine Burton at wide receiver, how does that shake out with Ja'Cory Brooks out for spring drills, as we know? And, just a continuation of developing some of those youngsters and newcomers in general, I guess, at the corner position, Chase, on the defensive side, and skill positions in general, I guess you could say, in addition to wide receiver, really. You can touch on just about all of those and just try to stay healthy, too, as much as anything. I know you're trying to get a lot of stuff done, but, health is obviously the primary concern at a time of year like this, and continuing to get guys healthy from last season, with an emphasis probably more than anything on that running back position.
Spring practice is a lot like fall camp in that way, that if you get out of there healthy, then you almost can't complain about anything else. But no doubt they want to get through these last 14 practices as healthy as they can be. Couple more days of acclimation before they get into pads. Not that injuries can't happen before they get into pads. It seems like more and more we see these non-contact injuries, Travis, where guys go down. But they should be getting into pads, I think, toward the end of this coming practice week. The wide receiver spot, the offensive line spot, those two areas definitely need plenty of addressing. The cornerback spot as well. Kool-Aid McKinstry coming back with some pretty good experience at the cornerback position, but losing Josh Jobe, losing Jalen Armour-Davis, there's an opportunity certainly to fill a void at that spot. Couple other areas as well, linebacker, defensive line, no area totally untouched in terms of graduation / NFL losses, but we'll be keeping a close eye on it as we kind of get spring practice cranked up again. Quick scheduling note for our listeners, Travis. No scrimmage activity going on this coming weekend, the final weekend in March. Following that, however, that's when you see the scrimmages start to roll out. I believe there's going to be a scrimmage on April 2nd and April 9th. Both of those are Saturdays, of course, followed by the Saturday A-Day game on April 16th. So,
SEC Network Plus for A-Day.
Oh, it's
year.
plus.
Oh, man, there are really, Georgia, I believe, is the only SEC team that'll be on like even ESPN2. Everything is just about on stream. All the spring games are pretty much stream. I guess because the SEC is doing so much baseball and softball, this time of year, you would think they'd still make room for it. But
maybe I'm
man,
remiss. What's the bill on SEC Plus? What's that come? What do you come out of the wallet for that? Any
well,
idea? I have no idea what
you can
it costs.
basically tie it into your cable provider. I think
Uh,
like if you have Xfinity or like I have YouTube TV, and I can tie that into my YouTube TV account. So
right.
I don't know if there even is an additional fee. I think you already pay for it. Maybe, I don't know. I just know there's going to be some serious angst come
Usually
April
the
16th.
Usually, Travis, the P in plus stands for premium.
When Ronnie and Russellville can't find a spring game.
Big props. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's when
yeah,
bottles fly through windows.
yeah. Mama is going to hear about it from the den to the kitchen. What'd you do to my TV? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to do some sleuthing. I'm going to find out exactly what SEC Plus sets people back. I'll report back for the Sunday
Oh
Nighter next week.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like you
Yeah.
said, hopefully it's just an easy bundle that nobody even notices.
Yeah. Even if it is, there's still some navigation to be done technology wise that people don't want to deal with, you know.
Yeah,
That
lots of fun.
cut the cord phobia, man. It's real.
We'll kick that around the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
That'll be fun.
yeah. Yeah.
Finally, Travis, a couple notes on former Alabama players, in particular at the wide receiver position. Just got a couple minutes left to go here in this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast, Travis. But Julio Jones released by the Tennessee Titans after a disappointing season. He's not yet hooked on with a new team. He will, there's no question, unless he wants to retire, which I can't imagine he would, that he'll get another crack with somebody, but unceremoniously let go by the Titans after 1 year. Also, speaking of wide receivers, Travis, the Dallas Cowboys traded Amari Cooper to the Cleveland Browns for essentially a fifth-round draft pick, which seemed like peanuts to me. There were a couple other late draft picks, I think a swap of sixths that were involved in that deal as well. But at the end of the day, the Cowboys got rid of Cooper for almost nothing, and the Titans let Julio Jones go altogether. And look, salary cap issues play into all this, right? The Titans saved, I think, $9 million on the cap by letting Jones go. So that's a factor too. Nevertheless, you're talking about two pretty outstanding talents exiting and quick and ugly circumstances.
Yeah, the thing we forget about with Julio, though, is he's been in the league 11, 12 years now, right? I mean, so there's some serious miles on those tires. And even though he is a big physical receiver, even those guys start to break down a little bit. So you wonder exactly how much is in the gas tank with Julio. I still think he can help a team. I know he can help the Jacksonville Jaguars, for instance. Yeah, yesterday. 2 days ago. So that's not to say he can't help a lot of teams still out there. Amari, I think, as far as shelf life anyway, you still would think he has a few more years at a top level that he can perform at. So that was interesting, but you said it. It always goes back to dollars and sometimes cents, although you question the common sense of some of these teams. So I think I'm with you. I think both those guys, well, obviously Amari, but I think he's on an opening day roster somewhere come next September.
Does he have another 1,000-yard season in the tank? One more. Does he have one more? He's 33 years old. Best receiver in the history of the Falcons for sure. Can he spring one more monster year for somebody?
17 game schedule these days. I mean, it could come down to that one extra game. You know, how we have these taglines of 1,000-yard rushers, 1,000-yard receivers. I hope so. I hope he does. I'd love to see him in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. You know, I mean, I think on the outside,
if nothing else, is a locker room guy.
Yeah, and he could still help even on the outside at his age. So 1,000. I think he could. I think it has to be.
It's about playing every game.
The right fit. I mean, if you put him with Mac Jones right now, if he went to New England with Mac Jones, would you feel like he could be 1,000-yard receiver in 2022?
If he plays 17 games,
because I think
yes.
he'd get the targets.
Yeah.
As long as he stays right. If he stays healthy.
Yeah.
But the health and the sustainability right now is where you're at with Julio more than anything.
A lot of Alabama guys in the NFL on the move. Mack Wilson moves from Cleveland to New England. O.J. Howard moves from Tampa Bay to Buffalo. Cooper, Julio, Bradley Bozeman's out in Baltimore. He's going to be
Carolina.
moving on.
Yeah.
Everybody's jumping around.
They are. And did you mention Levi Wallace?
Levi Wallace on to the Steelers,
to Pittsburgh.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. You're gonna have to get out.
I can't believe they got him for 2 years and $8 million.
I thought that was low.
Yeah,
I thought he was gonna maybe, but I don't think the corners really crushed it, like you thought.
Which I don't get. I don't understand.
The corner from New England that went to the Chargers.
J.C. Jackson.
I mean, he got a big deal, but it wasn't as the number one guy out there. It wasn't sort of like Jalen Ramsey-ish like you thought it might be, right?
Right. You're right. But yeah, Levi Wallace for $8 million over 2 years in Pittsburgh, absolutely a bargain.
I think that's great value.
Yeah. Yep. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. Be sure to join Travis and I next Sunday night. We'll be recapping the latest in Alabama football spring practice and plenty more. So for Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com, I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News. And we'll talk to you next time right here on Talkin Tide.